Welcome to another In the Boardroom. I'm David Zidel, and today we'd like to welcome Dina Diamond to the Ort Boardroom.
I'd like to welcome everybody to Ort this morning. This is our first session for the year, and we're really happy to have such a lovely turnout. Thank you for coming. I'm not going to give too much information about you, Dina, because I know David has researched, and I know that you've chatted, and I know that he has a whole introduction planned. But just once again, thank you for coming, and we hope to see you throughout the year, joining us on our talks, our in the boardrooms, and our training.
Getting Dina to join us is really amazing for a number of things. First of all, she sponsored the breakfast, which is fantastic, so thank you. But more than that, here is somebody who makes time not seem the same as the rest of us do. She expands time. She's involved in so many things, yet still has time to do other things. She's got 4 kids, hectic job, involved in all sorts of different committees and meeting all the time on different boards, and still manages all of that. Dina was head girl at Yeshiva, did very well in the MBA, cum laude, and then work-wise has done incredibly well, mostly with the banks. So working with the banks in terms of in the marketing side with Barclays and ABSA and Sasfin, and now with Investec. And I think for us as business people, what we'd really like to learn, and maybe you can teach it to us, is first of all, time management. And second of all, more important maybe, is the whole networking. Because when I mentioned to people that I was interviewing Dina Diamond, no one said who. Everyone said, oh, Dina. So everybody knows you and you seem to be connected. So maybe for business people around who really need those kind of skills, what is that? And maybe we'll start off with just a little bit of your background. And then if you can share with us what I kind of call your secret sauce. What are maybe the 4 or 5 things that have made you who you are today and have been the secret to your success? So maybe if you can give us just a little bit of your upbringing, what kind of carved you into the person you are today?
Well, thank you for a very exciting introduction. And thank you for doing this. I know that you do this a lot and you also give up your time. So I know where to start. So start at the beginning. So I was brought up in a very warm, loving home, and I think that also had a huge impact on who I am today. And the tribute is actually to my parents who are here today, and my family and my sister, and that always do support me and have always supported me in pretty much everything I've ever done, even though for sometimes a bit rogue and a bit off the path. Because I think growing up, I always wanted to do something a little bit extra. Like I'll talk about it. But yeah, I mean, I was at Yeshiva College my entire life, and I loved school. It was a much smaller school than maybe the bigger King David's, but because it was a smaller school, it gave me a lot of opportunity to do everything. So I was on the tennis team, the squash team, the netball team, public speaking, debating, like basically anything. And I loved all of it. And I actually try and tell this to my kids. I say the more you actually do, the more you actually enjoy. And school plays, like pretty much everything. And so I was head girl. So it was very busy. So you've got to also balance school and balance your responsibilities with the school. And also just I think growing up in a home that was always open, always welcoming. My family also always were doing charity, always having people, always reaching out. My father was on every committee, I think Jewish committee that you could actually imagine, always raising money, always raising funds. We actually used to make wine, Kiddush wine for Friday night. And we would get the whole basically community involved. So this isn't your general upbringing where at 12 o'clock at night, like a truck arrives from Cape Town, you stop traffic in the road. It reverses into your house with literally a couple of tons of grapes. And then we would squash the grapes, and then we would my father would phone every friend, and my parents, in fact, people, when they knew it was like wine time, I think they stopped taking the calls. But we would actually get all the friends over to actually help bottle the wine and sell it, and all the money would go to charity. So it was, I mean, we had like unique experiences growing up. So I think it was also like in an environment I was brought up of one always doing something, always being busy, always trying to accomplish things, and always involving people. And I think my whole family actually loves people. There was always like chaos in the house. There's always people in and out and staying and going, and traveling even when we were younger to Israel and overseas, which also built up, I think, my love of travel. And then at school, so after school was a busy year in Matric. And then after that, I was like, no, I definitely want to go to Israel for the year. I went to school to Israel on a program. I went on because like you also always think like, how much time do you have to like just take a year off? So between school and between starting varsity and responsibilities. So I went to Israel for the year on a program called, I think today it's called Limud, which is basically you go on kibbutz for a little while, you go study in yeshiva for a while, you do traveling, you meet up with an Australian group. So it also gives you like a good sense of self. I think in South Africa, we grow up maybe in a little bit of a bubble and a bit more protected. Whereas if you travel, you really, and especially when you're 18, that's like the first like sort of moment to get out, to be independent and to kind of do your own thing and to rely on yourself, because you can't just say like, oh, this isn't working, like please help Mark. Like you need to be able to just get it done yourself and figure it out. So I think that gap year was also like fundamental in trying to kind of create sort of your path and who you are. And but I always knew I was going to come back to South Africa, and I always knew I was going to come back and study. But when I came back, I didn't know if I should study a BA or a BCom, because I've always had sort of both sort of parts of my brain, the financial side and the marketing side. And when I came back, I said to my mother always gives me good advice. She's like, I said, well, I don't know what I should do. Should I do a BA, a BCom? She goes, well, you're always good at English. Maybe just do that. So I was like, and there was French, so I did French at school, and I did quite well at French. So she's like, I just do a BA. And I was like, okay, that sounds fine. So I actually started studying and started doing a BA at Boston City campus, which was in Orange Grove. They've since, I think, got nicer campuses, but Orange Grove was the campus at the time. It had a ping pong table on the roof. I don't know if you remember that. And then I did so, but while I was studying, I like to do a lot of things. So as you mentioned, I'd like to do a few things at the same time. So I was involved in B'nai Kiva. I was also working for Marie Claire magazine. So because of my French, a friend approached me. Marie Claire was moving into South Africa. And they said, are we looking for someone to assist with translating articles? Because Marie Claire didn't have their own writers at that point in South Africa. So we used to take the French edition and they would bring it to South Africa, and they needed someone to translate it. So like kind of on my side, I was translating and editing articles for the Marie Claire that came into South Africa while I was studying. And then I was like, no, it's just not enough. I need to do more. I'm a bit bored. So I went to a friend of mine. I was like, I need to do something. He's like, well, what do you want to do? And then I landed up going to speak to Brett Morris, who is now the CEO of a major advertising business. And he's like, well, what do you want to get into? So I said, I don't know. I said, in advertising. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So he said, well, client service, creative. I didn't know anything about it. So he actually said, well, there's some jobs, just go and try it out. And then I landed up getting a job as the copywriter at J. Walter Thompson. Again, I didn't even know what my job was. I think they hired me. I wrote that was a creative CV. And when they hired me, I didn't actually know what I was doing. And then the one day, it was like 2 days later, I said, oh, so what? And I was working on Kellogg's and Sam, like really great brands. And I said, okay, well, what must we do? And they said, no, well, you're the copywriter. I said, oh, I'm a copywriter. So I did that, and then I was studying at night. So I was doing my lectures at night, and then trying to get those assignments. In those days, you actually had to write your assignments. It wasn't like today, everything's on computer. You got a pad of paper that was given to you by UNISA. You'd have to go put it in an envelope, and invariably you'd only get it there at like midnight. That was a drop-off time. Hopefully, I don't think a lot of people would be dropping off their envelopes these days, but you literally have to write out your assignments. I think education's changed a lot since then, and the options have changed a lot. Like now you can basically study anything online. Then I was working, and then I decided also to, when I finished my degree, I also thought, well, what can I do next, but more business orientated. So I did my PDM at Wits Business School. And I mean, Wits Business School at that stage was the top business school in South Africa. And I was like, yeah, sounds like a good idea, but also I'm going to carry on working, so I'm going to do it at night. So again, I was still involved with B'nai Akiba as a youth movement and doing a few things. And I started the PDM, but then a friend of mine, I was working at the agency, and we used to have shoots at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and I still had exams, and I still had to finish my BA. And my mother used to come to me, I remember, and she'd say, you know, my friends, all their children are studying and their books are creaking. Are like whatever, and your books are creaking. She goes, I can hear you've never opened these books. She says, I'm very, very worried. So I said, no, don't worry. I'm like, because I'm like, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was going to do a shoot for 4. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's all going to be okay. So I have always been a crammer. So in terms of the time management, I'll talk about that because it doesn't work for everyone. You've got to do what works for you. But I have always been a crammer, and I have always had the ability to like sort of do last minute. It's not a recommendation, but it is like, if you can do it and it does work for you, then you could do it. But if you need a bit more prep time, then you need to do that. But I always was able to cram. So just before my exams, I got out the books and I managed to do it. And when I got my results, I actually had to check twice because my mother said I was going to fail. So I was like, no, these can't be right. My mother told me I was going to fail. But I landed up getting cum laude and the highest marks in the country, which I was surprised about. Maybe they marked wrong. But I just remember, so I was like, okay, great. So, okay, I actually did pass. And I was very happy with that. And they actually did offer me a bursary, but then I wanted to do the PDM. So it is about that time management. Also, and sleep. People need sleep. And again, if you need sleep, you need to take that sleep because you don't function properly. I've always functioned on a bit less sleep. But some people are just built that way, I think. And also, we had a lot of coke growing up as children. I think maybe it was the sugar. Also not recommended these days.
I'm glad you clarified that kind of coke.
Coca-Cola.
But it sounds like from what you're saying is that whenever there's an opportunity to do something, you just grab it and you do it. You're not somebody who thinks, I can't do it. You kind of believe that if you can't, you will be able to. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And also, I always say, I really do think that we've got 24 hours in a day. And even if you say, like, I'm not going to work at night, or I'm not going to do it, like, you still need to maximize your time. Like, if I'm sitting and I haven't got something to do, I'm like a bit panicked. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, and I actually make lists of what I need to do. But sometimes there's a lot you have to do, but you forget about it. But like, if you always just have to come back and refocus and say, well, what did I say I need to do? Because like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that. And it's in various aspects of like your life. It could be shopping, it could be getting stuff for kids, for school, whatever it may be. But there's always stuff to do. So I like to make lists. So if I have a list.
I was going to ask you, because some people have these so-called to-do lists. I heard recently somebody who said you need to have a don't do list as well. So don't watch TV or don't play computer games. But how do you manage that? Because some of us write things down and then we don't even know where we put that piece of paper. How do you manage it from a to-do list? Do you have a structure to it, or just write it down and make sure you cross the way?
So I've got one on my phone. I've got the notes on my phone, and you can get another app also that tells you, like, and you can actually prioritize. So I also like to prioritize. Like, if I know these things are very important, but I mustn't forget about those things, I can do those at a later stage. I actually put them at the top, and you prioritize it. And then there are multiple apps that you can use these days. It depends what you like. And then I actually go through that list. I mean, there's always stuff that crops up, and there's new stuff. But
just Simon Sinek has a talk where he says having a to-do list is crucial because just crossing something off gives you that sense of satisfaction and gets you motivated to do the next.
Absolutely.
Then you also, I know you went and you worked in America for a short while, or 3 years, was it?
Yeah. So after I went to advertising, I was asked to move to a private equity firm, venture capital, that was starting out. It was actually a new opportunity. So I got there and I basically did everything from setting up the offices and cabling. And I was like the network administrator. I was doing the marketing. I was taking minutes in private equity meetings. I was helping on due diligences. But it gave me an amazing opportunity to learn everything. So like if you're in a small environment, often like there are roles that you wouldn't get to do normally, but they need you to do it. So you just take it on and you learn. Like you've got to also have the ability to learn. And so I never go like, that's not my job. Like I go, oh wow, how cool, I can learn something new. That's also like what I tend to do. So even like friends of mine, even growing up, would be like, oh, can you help me with an essay or something? I'd be like, oh cool, I'll learn something new. So I don't believe that anything you ever learn or anything you ever do is wasted. I believe that you can learn from everything. And even if it's a negative experience, even if you're working and you do something and don't love it, you know, you still learn from it. And later on it comes up and you can be in that conversation. You'll be like, oh my God, I actually did learn something. So you need to learn from every experience. You need to get that up. And when there is an opportunity to learn or do different things, my husband always shouts at me, he goes, why are you doing all of these things? I'm like, because how cool that I can do all of these things. I've got an opportunity to do this and that. And I'll talk about my abs experience after after America. So then when I was part of that company, I learned a lot of skills, but then I was doing my PDM, finished my PDM, and then I was like, it was the .com era, so the whole market was changing from .com to .com, and I was like, no, I need to get out of South Africa. I'm just finishing my PDM. I need a new opportunity. What can I do next? And I was like, you know, I've always wanted to like, if I had to go somewhere, where would I go? And I was like, people always want to go to New York. I was like, brilliant idea. And you go to New York. And I told my family, I told you I was always the flexion, or challenging them, I should say. So I was like, okay, now I'm going to live in New York. And they were like, you're going to live in New York? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to live in New York. But like you've got no visa, you've got no, I'm like, I know someone, it's fine. I'm going to go live in New York. So I literally packed my bags, I booked a ticket, and I had a ticket back then after 6 weeks. I said to come get more stuff. And I said, no, I'm going to live in New York. And I literally got on an airplane. And now that I think about it, it was a bit insane. But I literally packed my bags and I got into an airplane. I had one person's number that I knew in New York. And then when I told people before I left that I was going to live in New York, that I was going to New York, people were like, oh, if you're in New York, I know this one and I know that one, and you must phone this one's a cousins of a friend or whatever. I took every single number that I could get, and I was like, no, amazing. Tell me who else? And I had a long list. I was like, oh, did they have a friend? Okay, no, brilliant. I made a proper list. Again, technology wasn't as advanced then. I would have been much easier if I had a phone with WhatsApp, but didn't have that. So I literally made my little paper list, had my little book, I always had my book with me. I like writing things down. I think it keeps you like focused. And got to New York in the middle of like the most like freezing winter. I'd never ever felt cold like this in my life. I'd been to New York once before with my sister when she was moving there, and I was very lucky. I also like believe that you have to be flexible. So when you're going to do something like that, you can't be like demanding. I think kids these days are a bit more demanding. Like I was happy to sleep anywhere. I was happy to live anywhere. I was happy to do whatever I needed to do to live in New York. I was gonna live in New York and I was gonna make it work. So when I got there, I stayed at someone that I knew for like a few days, and then so I phoned everyone on my list and I started trying to network, and they were like, oh, and you must come to this event. I'm like, yeah, I'm there. Anything I was invited to, I went. And I stayed and I talked to as many people as I could, and I made arrangements with them. Oh, they was like, you'll show me around. Oh, no, okay, when can we do that? So if you're gonna, like, especially with networking, whenever you want to network and you want to start making connections, when someone says to you and they give you the opportunity and they say to you, okay, then we'll meet or whatever, you go, amazing, when, and you do it, you follow up straight away. Because if you've got that gap, because sometimes people will say it and then later on they'll be like, oh, okay, no, I can't, whatever. But if you commit right then and there, then you don't. And you go, and I literally, I was busy, like in New York, you can be busy 24/7.
So you were what, about 23 years old?
I was 23.
And most people at that age, kind of, even in that local environment, are scared to go up to somebody and talk. Why were you different? Did you know that this is the only way you can survive? Or was this, is it a learned skill? Is it innate? How did you, just connect with people?
So I mean, there are introverts and there are extroverts, and the extroverts. So I've always been an extrovert. But I love people. I love talking to people. And the bottom line is that everyone is an individual and everyone's a person, and everyone wakes up in the morning and brushes their teeth and still puts their pants on one leg at a time. Like, we are all people, and you can relate. Even if you think someone's, and I've seen this experience. I've had this experience. Even if they're CEOs of major companies, or they are whatever position they hold, they're still a person. They still have a family, they still have hopes, they still have dreams, they still have insecurities, no matter who they are. So what's the point? And also, if you decide you want to go and talk to someone, what is the worst thing they'll do? Sorry, Like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, okay, I'm fine with that. I'm okay. Like, there are people who are like that. And to be honest, that's not your issue, it's their issue. I mean, like, wow, I remember someone came to New York and I was like, oh, I'm so glad you're just a South African. And, you know, when you get to New York, you want to connect to South Africans because, like, it's a natural sort of, like, attrition, like, you want to go to the South African. And so someone arrived, and also when anyone arrived from South Africa, I'd be like, just want to help them, just want to welcome them because it's so nice because, you know, we all stick together and it's hard. You've got to work in when you get to a new city, it's tough. But if you're not willing to do the work, you're just going to sit there and go, oh my God, I've got no friends. I'm so sad. I've got no job. Like, you got to go and you got to make the effort, especially in a place like New York. So when I got there, I stayed at a friend, and then someone else I spoke to had been in South Africa for a while. And they're like, do you like where you're staying? I'm like, you know, it's okay. They're like, would you want to come stay with me? I'm like, oh, amazing. It was an American who had been living in South Africa for a little while, who I vaguely knew. And had a 1-bedroom apartment in New York. He said, no, you can sleep on my sleeper couch. I was like, oh, amazing. I was just so excited to be in New York. And I literally slept on his sleeper couch for 6 months. But when I was there, you didn't even know that I was there. Every morning, I didn't even have my toothbrush in the bathroom. I didn't want to be like an imposition. And I knew he was doing me such an amazing favor to be in his apartment. So I used to cook his friends dinner. I used to clean the apartment. I mean, it really wasn't so bad. It was probably this corner. Well, that's what a 1-bedroom apartment is in New York City, which you pay a fortune for. But it was Upper West Side. It was very much in the hood. And I mean, he was amazing to me. And I also was very happy that he was actually gay. So I wouldn't have any other complications. And in fact, he didn't tell me that he was gay, but when I'd been living with him for a few months and he'd take me to all these gay bars and gay clubs and all his friends were gay, he looks at me the one day and he says, and we used to watch Oprah at 3 a.m. and he'd say, you know, don't you? I'd be like, obviously. He goes, you know, I told my friend, he says, either you're like completely naive or you're like very, very diplomatic. I'm like obviously, yeah, I know. But I wanted him to tell me. I don't want him and I don't know why he was worried about it. Today, I mean, these days, I think everyone would tell you. I didn't even know what his pronoun was. These days, you've got to ask someone if they're he, she, they, it, grey, white, I don't know. The world's become very complicated. So I stayed with him for 6 months and he was amazing to me. But in that time, I literally went out as much as possible. I made as many arrangements. I went to every function. In New York City, there's functions every day. And there's clubs and there's parties and also when the South Africans gather, people like blame New Yorkers and they say, you know, they're so tough and they're so hard. But everyone in New York pretty much comes from somewhere else. And there are so many foreigners, and especially when you're with South Africans and you've got the same mentality and there's like a feeling of family, people are very willing to help you. So you let them. And you make the connections and you go out with people, and not everyone's your cup of tea and not everyone you're going to bond with and not everyone's going to be amazing. But if you go through that many people, eventually you whittle it down and you find your friends. And I found best friends. And I mean, after living on the couch for 6 months, I'm packing up every single day. I met some South Africans and an American girl, a British girl who at one of the functions, and because someone actually said, oh, you're South African, there's another South African that's been here for a while, you must meet her. And then I met her and she goes, oh, I've got a friend that's coming from London. And we were all like in sort of a new stage, and they're like, oh, we should all move in together. And we did. And we live together. I mean, they're like basically like my extra sisters now, and we'll do anything for each other. But our apartment was like a kind of friend's apartment, literally. So we joined, and our motto was that we would let anyone who needed to stay, any visitors. So our home was open. There were 3 of us, and we had it was a brownstone walker, 3 stories every day. I mean, again, when you're 23, you don't know so much. And every time anyone would go overseas, we'd have to phone down and all help take up the luggage up these thin little staircases. It was on the Upper West Side, 81st in Amsterdam, which is right near Central Park, which is also like amazing. Like I'd pinch myself and go like, oh my God, this is my life. Like you think like, because New York, you all watch movies and you get there, but I woke up one morning and I remember that's after being on the couch and I was like, what was I thinking? Because I had lived on the couch for 6 months. I'd just come to New York. I thought like, okay, I'm going to live here. I was also very lucky that through the networking and saying, oh, I'm here, I've moved here from South Africa, I'm looking for a job. I would tell anyone who would listen, anyone who would speak to me, anyone who would go out. I said, yeah, I'm looking for a job. And very soon, then within that 6-week period, I found a job. I found someone to sponsor me, to my parents, I think, shock and horror. And I just was like, I was like so lucky. I really was. And I believe that, like, what do they say? The harder you work, the luckier you get. And networking is work. It is work. It is communicating, but you've got to put yourself out there. And I could have just gone to that city and thought I was going to find a job, find friends, find somewhere to live if I wasn't prepared to take the risk. You have to take risks. Life isn't always easy. Well, if it had been easy, I would have just stayed home and done my degree and done what I needed to do. But I wanted more, and I wanted to do more exciting things, and I didn't want to look back and have regrets that I didn't do it. And a lot of people, even when I lived in New York, I used to go to London for the weekend, because that's what you do, you can. It's actually a short flight, and the time difference makes it really good. And when I got to London, everybody would be like, oh, I wish, and these are people, South Africans who are living in London, they'd be like, oh, I wish I lived in New York. And I'd be like, yeah, you do. But London is also amazing. And a lot of people went to London. There was that 2-year work visa. A lot of people moved to London. And and that's also a risk. Like when you move out of your comfort zone, you do have to rely on yourself. And when I got to New York, as I said, I didn't really know many people. But when I left, there were 3 of us in our apartment. Every single Friday, we would go out every night. Like we would just be out. We would just be doing stuff. We would be going to Yankees games or basketball or baseball or concerts. Like, because when you're in the city, you've got to make the most of it. Because it's tough. It's a tough city. It's not easy. But you make the most of it. And you go to the Hamptons in the summer, and you go skiing in the winter. And whatever you see on TV is real. Whatever stereotype you think happens in New York or in America, real. So you just go with it. Like you actually stand there sometimes and you go, am I in a movie? Is this happening? And so it taught us a lot. And because also when you're away from your family, your friends start becoming your family, and you start relying on each other, because you need a support network. Whoever you are, you need a support network. You need people who are always on your side, that you can just go and cry to, that can look after you, that you can just go to. And the way you do that is by being open and by being giving. That's another lesson. You got to be giving.
So you took that personal networking, and then eventually you moved it into business network. So you almost like networking on behalf of companies, because when you're marketing, that's what you do.
Absolutely.
So how did you transition from that to then maybe come back to South Africa and join the various banks? You said you were going to talk about ABSA and then investing. And how did you progress, and how did you use what you knew to go ahead in the business world?
So after being in New York for almost 3 years, I always knew I wanted to do my MBA. And I was like, no, I'm only going to do it at the top 10 schools. I'm going to do it in America. But like, guess what? They're not waiting for you. And I was like, oh, it's a 2-year waiting list. Okay. And you've got to do your GMATs and all of this. And my mother was like, no, you know what? You've done Wits Business School. You've got credits towards the MBA through the PDM. Why don't you just come back to South Africa and do your MBA here? And also after 3 years being in New York, it's a very cyclical, very transitional place. And a lot of people who'd been there, and a lot of my friends were going back to Australia, were moving back to London, wherever they were going. They were moving in the States or getting married. And I was like, okay, you're right. I just felt it was time for a change. It was that moment. There's always time for a change in your life, and you can feel it. And so I downloaded the application form. I did my GMATs in 2 days. People study for them for 6 months, a year. I don't even know. So I had 2 days because that was the closing date. I downloaded the application form. I faxed it through, because we had faxes in those days. And I said, if I get in, it's meant to be, and I'm going back home. And I got in. So I came back to South Africa, started doing my MBA, and I then was sort of seeing my now husband, then boyfriend, and he was up and down to London the whole time. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to quickly finish my MBA, and then I'm going to move to London. I got my work visa and everything. I was going to go to London, but I had to finish my research, my dissertation, my thesis. So I was working on that, but at the same time, again, get a bit bored. So I was working for Barclays Africa. I was working in their marketing division in Melrose Arch, and as like a temp thing while I was trying to finish my MBA, trying to make the most of my time. And at that point, I rushed, finished my thesis, handed it in, phoned him. I said, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to move to London. When should I book my flight? He's like, I'm moving back to South Africa. I'm like, okay. We had all these plans. So I was like, okay, then no problem. So when I was at Barclays, I was on a contract, and they were like, oh, if you're staying, we've bought a majority stake in ABSA. Will you move into the integration team, which is based at ABSA in town, in Joburg CBD? I was like, oh, cool, sounds like a great opportunity. Why not? So I moved to ABSA on the integration team and started working on their retail work streams, on their marketing work streams. So, especially when a big bank, as international bank, by a South African bank, I think, we've got a lot to teach and a lot to share and to help make the bank better. So I got involved with that. And also it wasn't easy because it was a tough role. It was a very, very tough role. But also my mantra is like, you've got to put in the work and eventually it will bear fruit. And so I worked. And then the team was wrapping up, the whole integration team. And I got offered, when it was wrapping up, they said, we'd love you to head up marketing operations. So they've been working on various marketing projects and new digital strategies. And they were like, we'd love you to head up the marketing team, marketing operations at ABSA. So I said, fine. So I moved into that role.
So before you get there, what do you think you did that made them say to you, will you head it up, rather than saying to somebody else? What were the things that made you the person that they looked at and said, you can head this up?
So when I was, as I mentioned, on the integration, it was a tough team. Also, it was a British team. And that, it's interesting working with the British. They are very specific in how they work and the personalities. They're not as warm. South Africans are amazing. South Africans are so warm and so wonderful. And that's why we naturally gravitate to each other, especially overseas. So it was tough in that integration team. But I mean, whatever I do, I believe you've got to do properly. Like, you can't do half a job. Like, if you're going to do it, commit to it and do it properly. Otherwise, why are you doing it? Choose something else. And it's also in my nature to want to perform, and I want to make the best of it, and I want to add value, and I want to feel that I'm accomplishing something. So even if it doesn't suit someone else, I'm still going to try and do my best. I'm still going to try and achieve the best that I can. So when I was working there, I always, and I don't just work. I work and I work at night, and I really try and do as much as possible. And I believe that is because, when you're doing as much as you can and you're really putting in effort and you're always thinking, well, how do I make this better? How do I improve it? How do I add the most value that I can add, that it does help you. And people see you doing that. But then whilst doing that, I do network. So it's about just being nice to people. It's amazing how far that gets you. Just being kind and just being helpful. And also if someone needed help with pleasure, and people knew that they could come to me if they needed something. And also it's about having networks and smiling. And if someone's in the coffee area, greet them, talk to them. If there are people around you, just integrate, talk. It doesn't hurt. And the more people that you talk to especially in an office environment, sometimes people don't want to be at work, but you spend most of your day there. So if you're with people that you can talk to and that you can actually connect with, it makes the day a bit better. If you've all got the same interests, or they can be completely different. And what I loved about it is that ABSA was very much out of my Jewish small upbringing and yeshiva upbringing. It was all people that I probably had a network with my whole life. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I love people. I love different cultures. I love experiencing it. I love learning from people. And everyone, as I said, everyone's an individual. And everyone wants to, if you want to hear someone's story, or if you're kind, or you just give them a smile, or it makes a massive difference, the way you talk to people. And treat everyone with respect. Whether it was the security guard or the CEO, I would literally say hello to them the same way. I still do. And I believe that you've got to treat everyone with respect, because it doesn't matter what role they have. They're still a human being and they still deserve your respect. And I think that also makes a big difference. And it talks to the networking. Even if I, after I left ABSA, the security guards would come and give me a hug, because they're like, oh, we miss you. And it's really a warm feeling to know that you've had some sort of impact. And you just have to always, I think, so be kind, treat people like people, treat them like humans. And not everyone wants to be your friend, and not everyone has to be your friend. And so you can try and you can smile, but always be the person you want to be. And I believe I always also behaved the way I would behave, and in work, especially if it's competitive and people want your role, or it's something like that, then they do try and sabotage you, or they don't necessarily want the best for you. But I think the main thing is, and a huge lesson in this, is don't ever put yourself down to someone else's level. Always behave the way you think you should behave. Don't ever go oh, well, they've done this, so I'm going to do that. No. Do I think that's the right way to behave? Was I brought up like that? Are those my ethics? Are those my values? And if they're not, I don't do it. No matter how bad someone is to me, I don't say oh, it's tit for tat. It's not. Because you know what? That person's going to have their own journey, and the world is round, and and very, very cyclical. And I've seen it time and time again. So if someone is out for you and whatever, then you know what? That's their problem again, not your problem. Behave like you would behave. Don't ever, ever, ever put yourself to someone else's level. Because I don't think that it's worth it. It takes your own sense down and your own values down. So that's been, and it's worked for me a lot.
And at work, have you ever had things that weren't successful, things that you struggled with, and how did you overcome that?
No, absolutely. Nothing's easy. And again, I think no matter, that's also another big lesson, is that no matter how easy you think it is for people, like when, especially now social media, no matter how easy you think it is on Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and everyone's got these amazing lives and it's all beautiful. It's not. Like nothing is easy. Nothing that is worthwhile is easy. It's not like marriage isn't easy, family's not easy, children aren't easy, work isn't easy. But you have to put the effort in and you have to persevere. One of my sayings is that tough times don't last. Tough people do. And tough times don't last, because you can go through a period that is very hard, where you are completely despondent and you think like nothing's going to go right, or how am I going to fix this? But you just keep going. You just keep going. You don't give up. You can't give up. Because if you give up, you're done. Like you have to keep going. You have to keep trying. You have to say, no, I can do better than this, because I am better than this and I deserve better than this. And then you just have to keep focused. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I promise you it's not easy. I've had many, many times where I've dealt with hectic situations where I literally think I was physically ill from the stress. But you have to keep going. And everyone experiences it. I promise you, no matter how easy you think everyone's lives are, I promise you they're not. I remember having a chat to someone and I was like, oh, there were such beautiful pictures of you guys. The whole family on the beach was beautiful. They're like, are you joking? It was a disaster. Everyone was swearing at each other. This one was late. This one was this. They like, don't believe everything you see. And that is what life is. Like that moment that people post is that moment. 2 seconds later, I know, like I've got a 1-year-old. She's smiling, beautiful, take a beautiful picture. The next minute she's in hysteria. So again, this is an example, but that is what life is. And there's ups and there's downs. It's not always going to be up. If it was always going to be up, everyone would be like, life is beautiful. I think you need to take substances for that. But it's about knowing that there are ups and there are downs. And it's okay to have ups and downs. And it's okay to have a bad day. And it's okay to feel like crap. But it's basically, you've got to keep, like, I am a natural optimist. And I do believe that you can make it better. And you can have a better day. And you can do whatever you need to do. And you can get what you want. But you have to keep trying and you have to keep positive. It's not easy, But if you just keep trying and you try to keep positive and you stay kind and you be nice to your friends and your family and yourself, you have to be kind to yourself. That actually it's going to be okay. And there will be another day and there will be another down, but it's okay because there'll be another up. So just keep going.
And at the moment you're at Investec. So what are you doing at Investec at the moment? And then how do you see yourself progressing or making Investec progress? Kind of, do you look short term or do you look way into the future when you're looking at a role that you're doing?
So, like, as you know, those questions like, what will you do in 5 years' time? I hate those questions. 10 years? No, I wouldn't do next week. So I generally live for the moment and I go, what can I do now? Like, how do I shape things now? Where am I now? So at the moment, I work in the private bank. So it's a very different space. So after my marketing operations role at ABSA, I was asked to take on the chief of staff role for marketing, communications, and public affairs. And it's a mammoth role. It's like, it was $1 billion budget. It was all the sponsorships. It was all the marketing. It was all the suppliers. It was looking at return on investment. It was managing the budget. It was looking at people. It was even having to go through a retrenchment process, which I hated, but I had to do. But then because I was in that role and because I was willing to do anything, I was on the Innovation Council. I was on the Group Strategy Committee. I landed up helping form the new values with Barclays globally and being one of the sort of the teachers, I guess, of the new values and culture. I trained over 3,000 people. And again, not because it was my role, but because I was willing to do it and I had put up my hand and I had made friends in the organization and I showed that I was willing to work. So that's how, also again, that role wasn't that, but it evolved because, I sat on the steering committee for a new building that we built in Joburg CBD. I was in marketing. I was now advising, and I did my research again on inner city regeneration, but I ended up being on a building committee, like we were talking about the structures and how the steel and like all of those kind of things. But it was amazing because again, I think you learn from every experience, and I learned so much. It was amazing. I loved my role. I mean, I worked like a dog. I was working 18 hours at that point. I had 3 children. I don't know what I was thinking then. I was a lot younger. And I worked very hard, but I gave it my all, and I loved it because I was learning so much. And the more I learned and the more I did, the more opportunity I was given to do work. So with my role at Investex, I work in the private bank. So I work with private clients. I work in what they call the high net worth international team. I work with amazing, amazing clients who do the most amazing things. And I love my clients because I learn from their stories. And these people are in sectors across the board, from property to entrepreneur IT to whatever it may be. But it's so interesting because these are people that have made a lot of money and have been very successful. But there's a lot of commonality among them. And some of them actually, it's like amazing that they have so much money. But I love meeting people and I love my clients. So I try and see how do we add value, but I don't just add. So I think also if it's my role in the private bank, how do I give them value? I don't look at like, how do I just give you value in this role? I like, how can we help you with wealth and investments? How do we help you on your tax structuring and your offshore stuff? How do we help you? So I'm always looking at different stuff. And if they're looking to connect with someone, I'm like, oh, I'm happy to connect you. I love connecting people. And not for any gain, really. Again, that's also been part of my thing. I don't do something for gain. I don't say like, oh, I'm doing this, but what am I going to get back? I don't ever see anything like that. And I might have, again, I get shouted at from my husband specifically. Why are you always doing this? Why are you helping this person? Why are you that? And I'm like, because it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't, like, it's like literally no skin off my nose to help someone else. If I can help someone get a job, help connect someone in business, it's the greatest of pleasure. It doesn't make a difference to me. Like, it's going to help you a lot, but I'm only too happy to do it. Like, why not? And sometimes, and again, I don't do it for gain, but sometimes there is like someone will come back, or like years later, you've completely forgotten about it. And someone will come back and say, you actually helped me get that job and it changed my life. And then I'm like, wow. And that feels so good. For me, that's a reward. It's like I've helped someone with their life. And it's made a tangible difference in their life. And then it's got an offshoot. Everyone's life affects everyone, a lot of other people. And there's a sort of domino effect. So if you can help someone, why not? Why not? How much does it hurt you to do that? So I love connecting people. So I do that a lot in my role. And I've now also, I love creating events. I'm like I love people again, love events, and I invest. I mean, we do that a lot now. I did a fortune at ABSA as part of the events team and sponsorships. I mean, I also go to any sports event. I'll go to any, I love it. It's all marvelous. I was in America, I was in baseball. I watched Shaquille O'Neal play. I mean, it's just very cool. So now also, like, we had an event last week with an organization called YPO and Andre de Ruyter, the CEO of Eskom. So like, if anyone wanted to talk to anyone these days, who would it be? It would be Andre de Ruyter, because people want to know, like, what is happening? No one knows. So, I mean, he has a plan. That's good news. And someone tried to poison him, so he's okay. So, I did offer to taste his coffee for him. So it's just about saying, like, what are the opportunities? How do we create those networks? And how do we also like create a platform? This is what I'm trying to do, is create platforms where people engage and get value from it. So, and who do people want to listen to? Who do people want to hear talk? So like, we also was a function of Musi Maimani. So he's amazing. I mean, he's got a very big election that he wants to run in 2024. So I'm like, but I heard it. I'm like, I'm sure people want to hear it. So like, how do we make that happen? So it's always about thinking about, I've learned something new and it excited me. How do I share it? How do I'm sure other people want to listen to it. How do I create that platform? How do I build on it? And it's always about thinking. And also, let me tell you that Andre de Ruyter is possibly the busiest man in the country at the moment. And everyone wants to see him. But you find him up and he says, okay, like, what's the worst he's going to do? No. And how do you also get the contact? You like use a bit of common like sense and a cycle. You find this PR guy. And you get to him and you send direct an email. Would you like to talk? And then you get an answer, yes. I mean, how wrong can you go? I mean, it's really, really nice. I mean, in fact, that's what we did. So I sat on the board of the Jewish Report newspaper, and over COVID, we did 145 webinars. And what we found is that we managed, and you talked about Simon Sinek, we were able to get people, and people were blown away. Like, how were you able to get them? This was COVID. No one was doing anything. And they were only too willing to be on a platform. And we've built that platform. We have had millions of views, millions, because it created content that people wanted to see. Again, I don't know what direct monetary value we're getting from it. We've made some, but it's about creating that platform to give back. It's about, and we also got messages, like sometimes we also just get a random donation from someone to say, you saved my mother's life during COVID. So they give us like a huge, and we live in London and she's all alone. You saved her life by creating that content. And that's the biggest like pay I can get. So it's voluntary, it's total volunteer organization. But when I hear that, it makes a fundamental difference. And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work to do those webinars, fortune. But we're like, what do people want to hear? What do people want to, like, maybe this one be picked up a little bit. We did a webinar with Adrian Gore and Mark Abel, and they gave like a really positive spin on South Africa and a really positive spin on how we can all be okay. And do you know how many people that affected that? Just from the responses we got, we said, people were like, it was during COVID, they were like, I was so down and I thought there was no hope. And that changed my life and changed my perspective. And again, change your attitude, change your life, literally. And that's what it did. And when we hear that, it's just, that's so rewarding in itself. That if we have helped manage to help people or educate people or give them some bit of hope, then I've done my job. I mean, I'm always panicked I'm not doing enough because I always think, what else can I do? But when you hear that, then it's just heartwarming and it's an amazing thing that you can create something like that.
So of all the people that you've met, so you've met a lot of people and you mentioned a few of them, what would be the 5 things maybe that stand out of lessons that you learned from people who've been successful?
So I think the first lesson is there's no easy way to do anything. It's hard work. Hard work is key. Like nothing just comes easily. Nothing that is worthwhile is easy. It takes hard work. It takes commitment. It takes dedication. It takes passion. It takes re-enthusing yourself to get there. But number one is definitely hard work. Hard work is critical. And trying to just go a little bit beyond. Always, like, don't just do your job. Go beyond. Don't just do what you need to do. Always go a little bit beyond. Values and integrity and ethics. Always stay true to yourself. Stay true to your values. Don't ever think that you can get ahead by putting someone else down. My late grandfather used to say that. He came from Poland, didn't speak English when he arrived. And he always used to say that to me. You'll never get ahead by putting someone else down. I'd rather show who you are. Don't stoop to anyone else's level. Don't try and degrade your own self, your own values. Stay true to who you are as a human and with your own values and keep on that path, no matter what happens. And I think number 3 is also always treat other people with respect. Treat everyone you meet as a human being. Treat them with the dignity that they deserve. Because again, the world is round. You don't know who you're going to meet. Like even when you're paying at a parking meter, I mean, we all like sometimes hectic and we're in a rush and we whatever. And you think like, oh my God, did I do what did I do? Like sometimes like that's happened to me where I've like just landed talking to someone. And like the other day I was at the machine at Melrose Art and I was paying for a ticket and I could see some guy was like struggling and I was like, Shane, let me help you. It turns out he heads up one of the corporate areas at my bank. And he's like, I'd never met you, but actually let's have a chat. So, and again, totally unrelated, I didn't know who he was. But he's like, oh, it was so nice to chat to you. And I didn't actually realize, and now I saw him in the building. So now he wants me to help him on a project in the bank. And then when we talk about networking, sometimes it's accidental networking. So it's just always treat humans with respect. And I think also, as I mentioned, I think family is critical. Having a support base is important. So don't neglect. No job is more important than your family. Nothing is more important than your family. Nothing. No matter how much work you think you have to do, no matter where you think you have to be, your family is the most important. Your family actually will people always be there for you. Organizations, individuals, even friends are not necessarily there for you always, but your family is. So, and my family really, really is. They've always supported me, always like created a proper grounding and really it's mammoth, it's huge. And I try and like with my kids as well, like I try and remember that. I try and make sure that I have time for that. Like, and that's why like when we're at the table, like no technology. Because we need to interact on it. Otherwise they're just on their phone. There's just a screen in front of them the whole time. And you need to have human interaction. You need to speak to each other. So, and again, like if I had like one day, it was when I was at ABSA, Maria Ramos, CEO at the time, wanted me. I was working on a conference, and she's like, and it was one of the like proper, I think it was like literally the Prime Minister of England coming to South Africa, and she's like, no, you can't. I said, told my family we were going to Durban for holidays, and she's like, no, I really want you here, and I think you need. I said, no, I can manage it from there. She said, no, but I really suggest. I said, no, I told my family, and I'm not changing, and I'm not compromising. And I went and I organized everything. I was on the phone. I took my laptop with me, and you can do anything anywhere these days. You really can. You take your computer, you've got your phone, you're in touch all the time. And I did it, and it worked out brilliantly. And afterwards, I was like, I'm glad I didn't compromise my family, because I knew what the right thing was to do. And when you know what the right thing is to do the right thing. Do the right thing. That's all I can say. And I mean, lastly, I think it's also about attitude. It's like, again, it's as there's that saying, which is don't wait for the storm to pass, learn to dance in the rain. Because we're always in a storm. There's always something that's not great. South Africa, we face many challenges. You hear all the time how resilient we are. We have a few issues, a few. We had a few before the power, with crime and corruption and our little stories with electricity. But the bottom line is that we live in an amazing country. There's huge opportunity here. So even though there is unfortunately a massive disparity in the population, that creates opportunity. Creates opportunity to build, it creates opportunity to grow. And you just have to work a little bit harder, because if you have an idea is nothing without implementation. And without putting that effort in, you're not going to achieve anything. But this is an amazing country. As I said, we've got amazing weather. We've got great people. And again, people are very negative. But look at the positive. And look at how we live and how we can live in this country compared to what you pay in Israel, in London, in New York. And also, if you go live in those other countries, you have to live with those people. You have to live with the Americans, the Australians, whatever, that are different in your culture. And South Africans are very warm and giving naturally and friendly people. Even the beggars are smart, especially when they're showing people where to go on the roads. You know, I mean, I love that taking that initiative to help the metro cops, even when the traffic lights are out. I mean, I think it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's the country that we live in. So just appreciate where you are, because no matter how bad it is, guys, there's always light. Can't see it always naturally, but there is always light. So just help yourself. Just change your attitude. Make it seem like positive. Look at the good. What they also say is, don't count the issues, count your blessings. Because if you count your issues, you're never going to get anywhere. It boggles you down. It makes you negative. You start panicking. You're never going to get anywhere. But if you count your blessings, you have so many. No matter who you are, everyone's got blessings. Count your blessings, use them, and use it to your best and your most positive to achieve what you need to achieve. And for everyone to achieve things is different. Everyone's got levels. No one has to be the CEO of a company. You don't have to be the head of an organization. You just have to be you and be the best you that you can be in the position that you're in. Everyone's role is different. And not everyone is born to work. And not everyone, but if you've got a family or whatever, your role is your role. Do your role the way you want to do your role, but to your best ability. You don't have to be someone else. Don't try even think about it. In fact, sometimes switch off social media because it drives you the wrong way. It makes you think, oh my God, this person's life's amazing. Are they doing this? Don't worry about it. Worry about your own life, your own self, and your own level of success in your own measure. Because that's the most important.
Thank you. Some inspirational words. Eh? What I'm going to take away from what you've said, a few of the things is always be open to opportunities and seize every opportunity that comes your way and learn from everything that you go through. So I think those are very valuable lessons. I'm going to open it up if anyone has any questions. Anyone got a sparkling question for a Diamond? Yes.
I never knew any of this. You're my new spirit animal. I'm going to ask you the female card, but I know I've been on panels as well. They say I can like being a woman. It's not what's between my legs, it's what's between my ears. But being in a man's world, being in patriarchy, for want of a better word, being a nice Jewish girl in an environment culturally that tends to favor men in the outside world, and we must know our place. I'd like just to know how have you used your own being to navigate the sharp and
So, I mean, that question is a very relevant question because it's much harder to be a woman. Where they go, I mean, there's all the feminism, like sort of movements now, and they say, like, women and men are equal and women can go just as far as men, but women have different responsibilities. And women do show up, and there are always boys' clubs. No matter where you go, there's a boys' club. And that it somehow gives them a little insight, or they're playing golf or something. It is harder as a woman, especially in a corporate, like to make your way and to do stuff. It is definitely harder. But that's why you have to work harder and you have to show them up. But also, as a woman, you've also got advantages as a woman. You've got a bit more flair, a bit more charisma, a bit more charm, a bit more, use your ability as a woman to try and help you into your advantage and try and get something, because it does work to be a woman.
So changing it from the inside as such, rather than becoming competent.
No, you can't be
Very
competent.
difficult to
It's not going to help.
unmansplain yourself.
Absolutely. Because the second you put on that, like, I'm going to be a man and like a woman in a man's world, and it doesn't work.
Or a little
And also be yourself. Like, they're going to have to deal with you as a strong woman. They can't say oh, she's just a woman, and ignore her. Like, no, I am a woman and I'm going to use my femininity to my advantage, and I'm going to get far doing it. And thank you very much.
From a natural skill set, I think there's one attribute women has that men don't have. Is the ability to multitask and conclude.
Absolutely.
And conclude. Because that's the big thing, because usually a multitasker never concludes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think women have advantages.
It's a big advantage.
Yeah, so
Thanks for admitting it.
Now, what is your take on getting old? People have this attitude, no, well, you should, they even react to you like that. I'm actually older than I look like you. And they say, oh, I'm passing away and I'm happy. And I would say, I'm not sitting at home knitting. I would knit like my mother did, but anyway. I don't want people, I know what you're saying, but don't care what people say or think. But I do feel it's very hard when you're older. I would never get a job at my age. And I did have my own business, but that's another story. Things change. I'm not mentioning that. But anyway, I don't want to give up because I'm older. I want to keep moving. But what is your take on that?
So you're right. I think there's a sexist, there's an ageist thing that is very, I mean, organizations can say what they want and companies or whatever, but that does happen. There is sexism, there is ageism. But the bottom line is that you as an individual will determine that yourself. There are a million things. You don't have to get a job in an organization. There are a million volunteer organizations that need help from people who are capable and willing. There is so much need in this country. I mean, I was speaking to someone who's a massive, massive, massive philanthropist. And he said to me, the reason, I said, why are you still here? Because I know everyone's talking about that leaving South Africa story. And he said, you know why I stay here? He said, because I know the difference that I can make. He said, the opportunity in South Africa to make the difference is massive. So it doesn't matter what age you are. If you have the capability, the energy and the capacity and the time to help find a place that you can do that work. Just because you're getting older doesn't mean that you can't do stuff. I mean, we did a webinar the other day with Gary Player. Gary Player in his 80s. I mean, he is phenomenal. And he's still inspiring and he's got so much energy and you're like, wow. And you look at the likes of a Solly Croc also, who for his 90th birthday, he raised money also. He's raised money for him. He's just you just because you're getting old doesn't mean that you have to stop. Doesn't mean that you can't try new things. I even and again, it talks just about getting older, but when my kids were at swimming lessons, I was like, I learned to swim, but I never learned to swim properly. And I wanted to go to swimming lessons. And at my age, they're like, well, you're going to go to swimming lessons. I was like, yeah, I am. Because I want to learn how to swim properly. It doesn't matter what age you are. If there's still things you want to do, if there's still things you want to accomplish, if you want to still give back to society, there's opportunity. There is opportunity. So you just look for that opportunity or start speaking to people. It's about networking. It's about saying, oh, I am a bit older and I don't think I want to get a job. Or what do I want to do? Like, who can I talk to? And you start talking to people and saying, oh, you know, I'd love to volunteer. And maybe it starts out as volunteering and maybe it turns into a job or a role. But there's so much opportunity, especially in this country and the community. We are built like that as a community. It's a very warm community where there is opportunity. People who are willing to help. They really are. I've always found that people are really willing to help. You just ask. I think there's lots of opportunity, and it sounds like you've got energy, and it sounds like you still want to do stuff.
Thank you very much. Whenever we do these kind of talks, what I find fascinating is you never know exactly where it's going to go. And I found today very inspirational and kind of very uplifting. So thank you for that.
Thank you all so much for joining us, David. Thank you for facilitating and hosting all our In the Boardroom sessions. We are planning a very exciting lineup for this year. And now we have Dina to help us add names to the In the Boardroom list. We start off every year with a really beautiful session by an amazing, incredible woman who has not only sponsored the breakfast for us this morning, but shared so much of herself, her life, her journey, and her experiences with us. We hope that you'll all join us regularly this year. Come to our talks, join us online for training, and any thoughts or ideas that you have on what you'd like us to bring you, we are always here to listen. To Dina, it's been so wonderful. I'm so pleased I booked this at the Absolute Achievers Awards. And we can't wait to work with you more this year. Thank you, Dee.
Use them.
Thank you, everyone. And you can have some food, and if you want to have a casual chat with Dina, you can. Thank you.
I'm David Zidel, and I look forward to seeing you once again next time in the boardroom.